Nicola Sturgeon is all set to resign as Scotland's first minister after more than 8 years in the role. The Scottish National Party leader is expected to make the announcement at a hastily arranged news conference in Edinburgh. It is not thought that her departure will be immediate, allowing time for a successor to be elected. The source close to Ms Sturgeon says that the longest-serving Prime Minister told the BBC that she is set to resign. Former US Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has kicked off her campaign for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. Supporters in South Carolina have cheered her on, hoping she'll beat her challenger Donald Trump. Haley, a former South Carolina governor who served as the UN ambassador under Trump from 2017 to 2018, is set to lay out her campaign plans in a speech this week. The daughter of Indian migrants, Haley, who is aged at 51, has gained a reputation in the Republican Party as a solid conservative. South Carolina is expected to host one of the first Republican nominating primaries in 2024 and will play an important role in picking the eventual candidate.
To the United Nations has been very special to me.
Japan has told China that violations of its airspace by uncrewed surveillance balloons were absolutely unacceptable. Japan's defense ministry said that it strongly suspects China's surveillance balloons had entered Japanese territory at least 3 times since 2019. Japan's government is considering relaxing requirements on the use of weapons to defend against intrusions of its airspace. Attention to past intrusions of Japan's airspace has heightened since the United States shot down a Chinese balloon this month. As the Russian offensive continues, Ukrainian Red Cross volunteers continue to evacuate immobile patients from the hospitals of the Donetsk region. They transported them from the hospital to a Doctors Without Borders medical train that evacuates patients to safer regions of Ukraine.
Все хорошо, постойте здесь, чтобы не мешать. Вы просто постойте, потом...
Hundreds of people took to the streets of the Colombian capital of Bogota in support of President Gustavo Petro's healthcare reform bill. The leftist president had previously called for the supporters to gather as the Congress readies their discussions and vote for dozens of social reforms he vowed to promote. Petro issued the bill to reform the healthcare system, which aims to grant a broader service reaching rural areas, a larger state health service budget, and focus on preventive attention.
Vamos a levantarlas. Petro. Petro.
Colombianas y colombianos, aquí está su presidente.
Iniciaron el estallido social.
An Italian court will deliver its verdict on whether former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi paid witnesses to lie in an underage prostitution case that has cast a long shadow over his political career. Prosecutors have demanded a 6-year prison term for Berlusconi, accusing him of bribing 24 guests at his parties to provide false testimony in a previous trial where he was charged with paying for sex with a 17-year-old exotic dancer. The scandal over the so-called parties contributed to Berlusconi's downfall as Prime Minister in 2011, marking the end of his 4th government. U.S. authorities have arrested 4 more people in the killing of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse, including the owner of Miami area security company that hired ex-Colombian soldiers for the mission. The squad of former Colombian soldiers are among dozens of suspected of carrying out the July 2021 attack that authorities say originally was envisioned to be a coup rather than an assassination. Investigators allege the plotters had hoped to reap lucrative contracts under a new administration once Moïse was out of the way. Ukraine has urged allies to speed up the pace of military aid as NATO defense ministers prepared to meet for a second day today, while Russia bombarded the eastern front line in what appeared to be the early salvos of fresh offensive. Much of Russia's artillery fire was focused on Bakhmut, a bombed-out city in Donetsk province and a principal target for President Vladimir Putin. Ukrainian troops there have fortified positions in anticipation of street fighting. Bakhmut's capture would provide a stepping stone for Russia to advance on 2 bigger cities, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. These 2 are in Donetsk, giving it momentum after months of setbacks ahead of the first anniversary of the invasion on February 24th. In a miraculous escape, a 77-year-old woman was rescued from the rubble in Adıyaman after almost 9 days since the 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck Turkey and Syria. Fatma Gangor had been under the wreckage for 212 hours when the command rescue team pulled her out. UN authorities have said that the focus of the aid effort has shifted to helping people now struggling without shelter or enough food in the bitter cold. But rescuers are still pulling out survivors from the ground more than a week after the initial quake. Even as New Zealand looks to recover from Cyclone Gabriel, a 6.1 magnitude earthquake has struck near the nation's capital of Wellington. The US Geological Survey reported that earthquake struck 70 kilometers under the Cook Strait. Residents reportedly fled the ground, shaking for 10 to 20 seconds. However, no damage has been reported and neither has a tsunami warning been issued. The quake comes even as Wellington began implementing measures to recover from Cyclone Gabriel. The natural calamity has caused widespread flooding and landslides that left 4 people dead. Russia's defense ministry has released a footage of its Tu-160 heavy strategic bombers conducting routine flights. The ministry said that the flights were performed over neutral waters of the Barents and Norway seas. The 2 Tu-160 aircraft, which can carry up to 12 short-range nuclear missiles, were in the air for about 13 hours. The footage came a day after Moscow released video of its Tu-95MC nuclear-capable strategic bombers performing what it described as a 7-hour routine flight over the Barents Sea, which separates Russia and the United States. New Zealand Prime Minister Chris Hipkins has confirmed that Cyclone Gabriel has killed 4 people so far. As the country took stock and assessed the damage, Gabriel, which reached New Zealand before making its way down the east coast of the North Island, cut off entire towns, washed away farms, bridges and livestock and inundated homes, stranding people on rooftops. With around 1,400 people unaccounted for since the cyclone crisis began, Hipkins said that roughly 1,100 people have been reportedly found and there is likely to be considerable crossover between the 2 lists. Authorities estimate more than 9,000 people have been displaced so far, with around 3,000 housed in temporary shelters. The United Arab Emirates has sent more aid supplies to Syria following the earthquake that had devastated the country and neighboring Turkey last week. Planes from the UAE carrying food, tents, clothing and medical supplies have been landing in Damascus and Latakia almost daily since the earthquake. The UAE delivered almost twice as many supplies in one day as it had in the previous 6 days. The increase came a day after Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi asked the UAE's President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan to increase aid to Syria. At least 4 people have died in the Cyclone Gabriel weakened and moved away from New Zealand as the country started to assess the damage caused by significant flooding, landslides and high winds that left 3 people dead and displaced thousands from their homes. Residents in hard-hit areas are now being asked to conserve water and food because of fears of shortages after the cyclone forced New Zealand to declare a national state of emergency for only the 3rd time in its history. Authorities estimate more than 10,000 people have been displaced so far. New images and footage have been released by separatists in Indonesia's restive Papua region. The footage shows the New Zealand's pilot who was taken hostage last week. The separatists have pledged that they would not be freed until authorities acknowledge the independence of the area. The pilot, who flew a plane operated by the airline Susi Air, was abducted by fighters from the West National Liberation Army last week after landing in the remote region of Andua. Mahfud MD, Indonesia's chief security minister, has vowed to ensure and secure Merton's release. At least 1,363 people attended a record-breaking Speed Daters meeting in Brussels yesterday. Organisers billed the Valentine's Day event as the world's biggest ever, smashing the previous record of 964 set in Dublin in 2019. The event took place in a Cavendish former warehouse, which was filled with rows of tables, bright lights and disco music. Participants circulated every 4 minutes, meeting on average 16 people over the course of the evening. The floats for Cologne's Rose Monday Carnival Parade, which celebrates its 200th anniversary this year, were presented in the German city yesterday. Traditionally, the floats make fun of national and international politics, and this year, Russian President Vladimir Putin appeared twice. On one float, he is depicted in a socialist fraternal kiss with the devil, on another one as a vampire putting the world through a meat grinder. The Rose Monday Parade is being held for the first time in 3 years after being cancelled in 2021 and 2022 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Last year, the parade was scrapped in protest against Russia's military actions in Ukraine. Some 12,000 participants and 72 groups will take part in this year's parade, which takes place on 20th February. Native Americans from across the United States attended the Seminole Tribe's 50th Tribal Fair and Powwow. The powwow is a traditional gathering of American Indians in which tribes reconnect and catch up once a year. Visitors embraced relatives and friends from across the country that they had not seen in years. The ceremony began with a traditional grand entry ceremony in which participants dressed in traditional costumes danced to singers and drummers in a circle. Organizers say more than 200 tribes from across the country were represented, including from California, South and North Dakota, Minnesota, Oklahoma and New York State.
In the 1800s and the 1900s, and she's wearing a beautiful, now we're getting into the modern.
Couples from Peru's LGBTQ+ community made the ultimate romantic gesture on Valentine's Day as they got married. The ceremony, organized by the Red Puruna TLGB, was however merely symbolic since same-sex marriage is not permitted under Peruvian law. The municipality of Lima organized a community wedding for about 100 couples in which the brides and grooms professed their love in a ceremony at the magic circuit of the water park, where they posed for photos in a carriage to celebrate the new unions on Valentine's Day.
Pues nos daban el permiso para hacerlo el día que ellos querían y manifiestan el compromiso.
The global economy is still enduring the consequences of 1 year after Russia invaded Ukraine. Fertilizers and energy, along with more inflation and economic uncertainty in a world already contending with too much of both. Companies and countries in the developed world have proved surprisingly resilient, but in emerging economies, the pain has been more intense. Like in Nigeria, bakeries have shut their doors, unable to afford the exorbitant price of flour. Bakery manager also says that the costs have increased by 136%. The International Monetary Fund dropped growth expectations this year and last equating to about $1 trillion in lost production.